starting in the 5th minute with Atletico Madrid building up in this 3-1 shape with Koke as a holding midfielder as our number 6 versus Inter Milan's 5-2-3 or 5-3-2 with Barella playing a dual role as both the right centre midfielder or right forward. In their defensive roles, the Inter Milan wing-backs were quick to press in those wide spaces against Lino and Molina, although Damian did get quite a bit of criticism from the commentators for stepping off, although one couldn't blame him given beyond just having Griezmann, who was constantly floating to try and help creatively, had a lot of players supporting Lino in this left-hand side, creating Damian's indecision. Speaking of Griezmann, he was constantly floating to try and support Saul, Rodrigo de Paul and Koke in their midfield build-up and recycling, with Llorente instead providing the focus, which facilitated Griezmann being able to float around the pitch. A huge amount of Atletico Madrid's attack was being carried by Lino with his direct running and his dribbling in this left-hand side. With so much attention on Lino in that left wing position, it did allow for Saul and Rodrigo de Paul to be able to push up into more attacking central positions, leaving just Koke to screen the back three. Eventually in this move, we see Atletico Madrid whipping across from the right hand side. Notice that Rodrigo de Paul and Saul Niguez are in the box and more advanced than the on-paper centre-forward Griezmann, which shows up in Griezmann's XG. During the brief periods of Atletico Madrid's sustained possession in Inter Milan's defensive third, such as the period of the 50th to 60th minute, Inter's forwards would drop, such as Martinez here, to support their midfield, given it's a midfield three. They're going to help them in those wide spaces, as well as just above the top of the box. I'm a big fan of Inter Milan and their chances in this competition, but we need to see how quickly Thuram recovers from his injury, given his shot conversion rate and XG conversion rate. Another slight tactical quirk to check out with Atletico Madrid is their build-up deep, where the left-sided centre-back Hermoso actually moves from his left centre-back position into more of a left CDM position as Atletico Madrid sought to press in the wide space and in Atletico Madrid's defensive third, allowing him to present as both a means to counter-press if play breaks down, but then also be an option. And then thirdly, it drags Atletico Madrid's players more narrow, creating potential space for a switch out to Lino on the left-hand side. Note that Inter generally have a conservative 5-3-2 midfield block out of possession in their half, but on passbacks or opportune situations such as this, where Atletico Madrid are trying to build up in their defensive third, Inter press intensely, as we see with Barella trying to close this gap between himself and Hermoso. Witsel sees a potential opportunity to switch out towards the left-hand side. Turning phases of play like this into transitions was a huge boon for Inter this game, as it created several attacking transitions in their favour. Unfortunately for Atletico Madrid, they didn't have quite the same fortune. Skipping ahead slightly, we get to see Inter Milan in their 3-1 shape with Çalhanoğlu as their sitting defensive midfielder, their number 6, occasionally supported by Mickey or Barella, although they typically played number 8 roles in those half spaces, whilst the centre forwards, initially Lautaro Martinez and Thuram, but later Arnautovic and Martinez played as wide forwards, providing third player runs as alternative runs to Mkhitaryan or Barella. And of course, they alternated that such that, for example, if Mkhitaryan was making a run beyond his wing back, then Lautaro Martinez could drop off, and that way the defenders have a conundrum in that both there's players that want to follow their player, pulling the line deeper, but then also that will cause the line to be a bit more disjointed. With the line becoming disjointed like that, it creates more angles for potential flicks around the corner, etc. Another note on Martinez is that he just generally liked to drop as a number 10 into that central space to potentially link up with the central midfielders. Looking at Di Marco and Bastoni, they shared the left centre back, left wing back roles. So you can see that in how left hand side favoured Inter Milan were in their build up. Then also how we saw with this movement, Bastoni coming more narrow to create the channel to pass into Di Marco, who was dropping, but then also how Bastoni carried his run from that central space into more of a left wing back position, as well as also the fact that when Bastoni plays as that left centre back, Inter typically set up so that they're more left hand side inclined rather than sitting more centrally. With Bastoni making these runs, it allows him to get into crossing positions or divert attention from other attacking runs, allowing especially Mkhitaryan and Di Marco to be able to cut in from wide positions and drive inside to combine with Martinez or cross. To combat this, Atletico Madrid sought to put Llorente on this right-hand side, and he was expected, where Bastoni and DeMarco were both pushing up, he would track them so that they wouldn't overload the left-hand side. Unfortunately, Inter's play breaks down here. We'll get to see more of what I mentioned in Martinez having dropped, trying to play a chest pass to Bastoni, overlapping, doing that wide forward roll with Mkhitaryan looking to support, and then far side Barella joining Thuram so that there are options in the box if they swing in an early cross. Jumping ahead a few minutes, again with Inter Milan in that 3-1 shape. Again, another example of how they have that left-hand side bias to facilitate Bastoni being able to push up on that left-hand side. See how Martinez has dropped into more of that number 10 role, and the width being provided by Damian and Di Marco. This being against Atletico Madrid in their 5-2-3 or 5-3-2, similar to Inter Milan's defensive shape. Speaking of similarities, we've got Atletico Madrid pressing on Inter Milan's pass back, pressing further when Inter Milan retreat all the way to Sommer, although Inter Milan actually want this as it creates the spaces for Mkhitaryan, Barella, Martinez, Di Marco and Thuram to exploit during transitions. And so Inter Milan can drop into this somewhat of a 2-3 shape with Çalhanoğlu as our left-sided centre-back, De Vrij pushing into a quasi-CDM, Bastoni as our left-back, and Mkhitaryan and Barella still doing that same role as those number 8s between the lines, dropping to create the space for the likes of Thuram and Martinez to try and exploit. Inter definitely had a preference for deep build-up through their right-hand side, and so as Atletico Madrid and Mark and try to track the runners, such as Barella dropping here, they're creating that space that Inter Milan want and leaving their centre-backs more exposed as they don't have wing-backs to cover them. See said space that Damian is looking to try and get the ball into. He manages to get it into Martinez, but fortunately for Atletico Madrid and the defenders who gambled here to both track Martinez dropping, leaving Thuram and Mkhitaryan free. By both committing to this, they prevent Martinez, who's exceptionally good at rolling defenders, from being able to roll either way, and so Inter Milan's transition is stopped there. But whilst they typically built up initially on this right-hand side, they had a lot more success building through the right initially and then switching it out towards the left-hand side, taking advantage of just how committed Atletico Madrid had become towards this left-hand side and how little defenders they would have far side, creating more space for Martinez, Di Marco and Mkhitaryan. In this case, Atletico Madrid regained possession. They attempt a direct counter-attack. They did try this a number of times, but with a lot less success than Inter Milan. A note on that, with Griezmann as their centre-forward, he typically used these counter-attacking positions to force Inter Milan to reset rather than threaten the goal. Moving to the 66th minute, we start with another Atleti counter-attack. Both teams now have new centre-forwards, such as Alvaro Morata and Arnautovic. Just as earlier, Griezmann helps to manage the game here, turning a potential Atleti counter-attack into a moment of control, forcing Inter to reset into a defensive position. And then from there, Atleti can set up into that 3-2 shape again, with Rodrigo de Paul and Koke as screening midfielders, against Inter Milan in their 5-3-2 or 5-2-3 shape. Lino was still carrying the threat on that left-hand side with his dribbling, whilst Griezmann was carrying Atletico Madrid's threat by floating across the pitch and playing the more intricate passes. Because Griezmann's play is so intricate and there's not enough off-the-ball movement to capitalise on just how narrow Inter Milan's players have to be to combat this intricacy, Atletico Madrid aren't really able to capitalise. Moving to the 74th minute with Augusto's long throw-in from this left-hand side after he was subbed on, rather than Bastoni, who took them earlier in the match. These throw-ins offered great flexibility as it allowed Inter to be able to really load the box for a direct throw, or they could have the thrower throw short and instead cross from the near side. Atleti defend the throw-in. Unfortunately, Griezmann can't retain possession, and we skip ahead slightly to Inter with their slightly adjusted 3-1 shape. At this point, the right wing-back in Dumfries is the more advanced of the two wing-backs, and then Barella and Çalhanoğlu are positioned more defensively. Çalhanoğlu was already the number 6, but Barella is definitely playing more conservatively now, with Fretesi expected to do more of that shuttling midfield role. Speaking of, we do still have Inter doing those alternate movements. So we have Fratesi dropping off whilst Arnautovic is running in behind, creating the confusion in the back line I mentioned earlier. Further, the subs such as Dumfries brought refreshing attacking impetus. Dumfries especially, who looked to be front foot, positive, aggressive with his every movement, his every pass. This was supported by Barella and Çalhanoğlu dropping into that 3-1 midfield unit such that Çalhanoğlu could become a right centre-back, for example, with Barella as our CDM. This allowed those subs, those fresh legs, to get more involved higher up the pitch. Of course, the Champions League is a tournament and so it's open to greater randomness in who ultimately wins than a league. However, just like last year, Man City seemed huge favourites, borne by their results and their ELO. And so that's why I was analysing Inter Milan, Atletico Madrid here, trying to work out who has the player quality, who has the tactical strengths, who has the fewest weaknesses to be able to upset Man City defending their title. So next, I have to have a look at Bayern, Arsenal, etc. I'd love to know who you think can stop Man City this season. And with that, we're out. If you enjoyed the video, consider sharing on social media, subscribing, leaving a comment. And with that, we're out.